So today I'm going to be showing you how to perform this experiment. You need vinegar, doesn't matter what kind, white vinegar is probably best, a glass jar with a lid, and a plain egg. It can be a brown egg or white egg, does not matter. So you're going to place the egg in the glass jar, and then you're going to pour just enough vinegar in the jar to cover the eggs. You don't need to fill the jar up all the way. You can use a plastic cup as well. You just want to make sure you cover it because the vinegar does tend to stink. That's just enough vinegar to cover the entire egg. And then I'm going to take a cap and place it on top of the jar and seal it up, and I'll probably leave this off to the side for 2 or 3 days. So after a couple of days, I'm going to remove the egg from the vinegar solution. Notice that the shell is completely dissolved. That's because the eggshell is made of a soft substance called calcium carbonate, and the vinegar is very acidic. The acid in the vinegar dissolves the calcium carbonate shell, exposing this membrane. So now the egg doesn't feel hard any longer, it feels kind of squishy, and if you're careful enough, you can actually bounce the egg off of a solid surface. But make sure you're wearing gloves when you do this. The egg tends to break if you're not careful. It's important to note the size difference between the egg when we started and the egg after it had been soaking in vinegar for some time. This is due to a process called diffusion. Diffusion is the movement of molecules from an area where they are highly concentrated to an area where they are in low concentration. Vinegar contains all of these ingredients, which are not existing inside of the egg. So the ingredients move from the solution into the egg, and they actually fill the egg and stretch out the membrane. And this is what gives the egg the squishy, larger appearance.
So it's a little squishy. Definitely squishy.
I'm gonna wipe it off.
Yep, you can wipe it off a little bit.
The next step is to place the egg in a clean jar or rinse out the jar that contained the vinegar. And now we're going to add corn syrup to this jar. You don't need a whole lot, maybe just make sure about half of the egg is covered. You can also use maple syrup for this, which kind of gives a really nice smell to the egg, so that's another option for you if you don't have access to corn syrup. So I'm going to pour just enough to cover the egg up about halfway. That's probably pretty good. And then I'm going to seal the jar again and leave the egg off to the side for probably about 2 or 3 days. Now it's time to check out our egg after it's been sitting in corn syrup for a few days. Notice that the egg has a deflated appearance, so I can still see the yolk inside and a little bit of the egg white, but the egg is definitely not as filled up or swollen as it was before, so it really does look quite deflated. I also noticed that the jar that had contained the egg wasn't just filled with corn syrup. It seemed to also contain a watery substance that smelled like vinegar. So it seems as if the vinegar had left the egg and moved into the corn syrup solution. Remember, we had talked about diffusion as the movement of molecules from an area where they are in high concentration to an area where they are in low concentration. The corn syrup did not contain any vinegar, so the vinegar moved from within the egg where it was in high concentration to the corn syrup where it was in low concentration. This is because the egg membrane is semi-permeable, which means that substance can move back and forth between the environment surrounding the egg and the egg itself. The cells in our body actually function in a similar way. Each of our cells contains a semi-permeable membrane that allows important substances in our body inside of our cells. The final step of the experiment is to take the egg out of the jar with corn syrup, place it into a new jar, and then fill it up about halfway with water. You're going to leave the egg in the water for about 2 days. Notice how much it has changed in appearance. The egg resembles the egg that we removed from the vinegar. It's very full, has a very squishy texture. The membrane is somewhat softer, so just be really careful with this one. I should actually probably be wearing gloves. It's a little more fragile than it was before. And you can actually bounce this egg off of a solid surface as well. Since water molecules were in low concentration inside the egg, the water molecules moved from the jar through the semi-permeable membrane and into the egg. So the egg resembles its original shape. In fact, it's probably even a little bit larger than the egg that we started with.